Hi, this is Carrie from Scrapyard Chicks. I'm here with our photo ornament for today, and today we're going to do a spool ornament with this cute little button dangle at the bottom. What I did is, these are just some plain wooden spools that I bought at the craft store. I covered them with some paper, and then I put a little wallet size photo on there. And actually, my spool is about 1 3/4 inches this way, so I actually trimmed my photo down so it's about 1 1/2 by 3 rather than 2 by 3. So you want to probably pick a landscape style photo for something like this. That's usually what works the best. So you definitely, so I'm going to need to trim my photo down just a little bit to fit on my spool. You can use any kind of spools. You can use old thread spools if you want to, and then just some buttons, some twine. You could use embroidery floss, some scraps of paper, a little bit of ribbon, and you've got a really cute and fun little ornament, especially if it's for somebody who sews or quilts or something like that. What a fun thing to even tie on to their Christmas package. Anyway, so we're going to get started. These are plain wooden spools I got at the craft store. Like I said, you could find vintage spools. You could also find, you know, take thread off of spools that you might already have. You'll just need to change your measurements, because the measurements are really going to depend on the size of your spool. So what mine is, it's about 1 3/4 this way. So I cut a piece of pattern paper that's 1 3/4 by 5. And as you can see, it's just slightly too wide. So I'm just going to take just a hair off of it, off of the edge, just so that it will wrap just a little bit more easily. And I don't care if it's a little bit too long and it overlaps. That's actually better, because that's what you want, because that way you have something to kind of glue onto like that. So anyway, so I've got this piece. I'm going to put a little bit of brown ink around the edges. And then this is some paper from a couple years ago by the Basic Gray called Figgy Pudding, and I just love the color collection. One of the fun things about this paper is it has this peppermint drop paper, which is the perfect thing to punch out some little peppermint drops to go on each one of these little ends here. So I'm going to go ahead and I punched those out with my 1 3/8 inch circle punch. Once again, you want to just measure your spool to see what will work for yours. Then you can just use your circle punch. You could use your Cricut. You could freehand cut it if you wanted to and do a little sanding. Now, the one thing that's kind of tricky is to figure out where the hole is, because you could, put it into the center. What I did is I just kind of cheated. I put my piece of paper on there, and then I just took my fingernail and I kind of embossed sort of the hole mark, because it's not necessarily in the center of these little pieces. So see, I've got a little hole spot there, so I just take my regular plain old paper punch and I punched a hole, and just want to make sure that it lines up, and then I can use that one to go ahead and punch the one for the other end. You don't have to put anything on the ends of these. If you didn't want to, you could stamp on them, just kind of however you want it, whatever you wanted to do. So we are going to go ahead, we're going to glue the paper onto each end, and then we're going to glue this piece of paper around sort of the middle part of our spool. I would recommend using a liquid glue, 3-in-1 glue Tombow. You could probably even use white craft glue, whatever you really like for that. And then once we get our paper on there, I'm going to take my little photo, and I'm actually going to trim this photo down so it's just 1 1/2 inches high, because it's just a little bit too wide. And so you want to look for a nice little landscape style photo that will really work to go on your spool, and then we're just going to end up gluing that on there, and it's just going to kind of wrap around. So I'm not going to do that right this second. Right now I'm going to show you how to do the button dangle part, which is this little doodad here at the bottom. So for this you want about 12 inches of twine, and so you could use, like I said, you could use, I use baker's twine. You could also use embroidery floss, something like that. You could use thread, depending on what you like. I just tied an overhand knot in one end, and then I'm actually just going to take this and I arranged my buttons. I'm going to use about 6 buttons for the dangle part. There's 5, and then 1 is actually up underneath here and that's actually glued onto the bottom. So what you want to do is you want to arrange them from the smallest to the largest, and then you're just going to take your thread and you are just going to, oh, it's always hard to do this when you're under pressure, to these little tiny holes. So I'm just going to take my baker's twine, I'm just going to feed it through. You could put this on a needle, I guess, if you wanted to. If you've got a needle that would fit through the holes, through your buttonholes and through the baker's twine. if that would make it easier for you. I do know some people use floss threaders. I am going to show you a trick that we used so that you're just going to thread that on there and just go ahead and slide your button down. Once you get all the buttons on, then you can kind of slide them around and they actually kind of stay in place. We're going to go ahead and we're going to repeat that for all 5 of the buttons, and I'll be back in a minute to show you what that looks like when it's all finished. Okay, so I went ahead and I threaded all 5 of my buttons on. I left off the last big one, so they look just like that. You can slide them into place after you're all done. Then we're going to take the last button and we're going to put our thread, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to thread it on, but instead of just leaving that end loose, we're going to actually make a loop, because we want a loop kind of like this on the top, and that's what's we're going to tie our ribbon onto. So you want to kind of tie a loop. So then you can just go ahead and tie a knot underneath that last button. Okay, so we want a loop on top of that button, and then we're just going to tie a knot underneath. You want to leave probably about a 2-inch loop, something like that. So you can kind of put your finger through it like that if that helps while you're doing your knot. You don't want to tie it down too tight because we're going to use that loop to thread our spool onto. You can go ahead and leave the end loose for right now. We'll adjust the buttons and stuff. So you want it to end up looking like this. So you've got a knot tied underneath there and you've got a loop on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread this through our spool, and then we're going to glue that on the bottom, and then we'll have a little tie up at the top right there. And I'll be right back. Let me put some paper on my spool and I'll be back to show you how we finish this up. Okay, so what I've done is I went ahead and I glued the paper circles onto the ends of my spool, and I glued that long piece around the barrel. You want to make sure you use lots of adhesive, really get it stuck on there. I've got my button dangle that I made that has a loop on the end. So I'm going to make my ribbon hanger. So what I want to do is I want to, this is 12 inches of ribbon. I'm going to thread it through this loop like here, and then I'm just going to tie an overhand knot at the end. And then what I want to do is I want to thread that through my spool so it comes up to the top, and you can see how difficult that would be. So what I'm going to do is I took a piece of wire, just a plain old piece of scrap wire. You could probably use a pipe cleaner or something, whatever you can fit through there that stays nice and sturdy. And I folded it in half, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to thread my ribbon onto this like so, and I'm going to use this. I'm going to come through the bottom. I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to thread this up through the barrel of through the center of my spool. And it's just going to go ahead and pull that piece right through. Isn't that like magical? So I really love that. Then I'm just going to undo it like this. And there you go. I've got my my ribbon hanger. Then I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive underneath my button to hold it on there. And so then I can glue my picture on. I'll be right back to show you what it looks like when it's all finished. Okay, so what I've done is I put a little bit of adhesive underneath that button, and I just trimmed that end down a little bit. And then I put some glue all over the back of my photo, and then I'm just going to glue my picture right onto the barrel of my spool. Now you want to make sure that you really get adhesive underneath these edges right here, because photos are pretty stiff and they will try to pull away. That's why I like to use liquid adhesive rather than like a tape runner, or even probably even something like super tape. And one of the things I love about liquid adhesive is you can slide it a little bit, so it makes it really handy. So I just went ahead and get that photo glue down there, and then I have just a little 1-inch circle punch out that I can ink up the edges and just write the date, and I can just glue that onto the barrel of my spool. So here you have it. Now I could add stuff on here. I could put some rickrack around, you know, the edge right here, whatever I want to do. I could write something on there. I could put some more strips of paper. So it's just a really fast and easy little project. You can just slide these buttons. Once you kind of get your ornament done, you can just slide the buttons into place, and then they just dangle from the bottom of your ornament, and you've just got a really cute little ornament for your photo Christmas tree. So thanks very much for from Scrapyard Chicks, and we have 4 more photo projects coming up. Tomorrow we're going to be doing a matchbook.